Good afternoon, everybody. This is Pete with Home Matters, KIRO Radio 97.3 FM and 770 KTTH. We got a great show for you to hear today. On a Saturday afternoon here at 2 o'clock, we're talking to actually a new individual from the Madrona Group. They do a lot of stuff all around real estate. We're going to have an interesting talk. His name is Jason Fox. He's one of the founders. And we're going to get into not only his origin story, how he started this with his partner and friend Joe, but also get into some of the stuff that's happening. You guys probably heard in the news of the big National Association of Real Estate settlement that was the tune of $418 million. That's not pocket change. So we got Jason on the show here. How are you doing, Jason?
I'm doing really good, Pete. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we'll have a little chat. So I like, since you're new to the show, and our listeners always like to hear kind of people's background stories. So I know when you were a kid, you didn't go, hey, I think I'll be a real estate agent when I grow up.
I don't think anybody does.
Yeah. So how did that all happen? And then how'd you meet Joe and decide to do all the stuff you're doing with John L. Scott?
Yeah, well, so interesting story is that, so Joe was a real estate agent before I was, and I was in real estate marketing. I was helping real estate agents with their marketing, right?
Got it.
And so I've been doing that for a while, and Joe and I sat down for breakfast one morning, and the idea hit us, man, would we make a good team, you know?
Yeah.
And we tabled it, I don't know, for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And we were at breakfast again a couple of years later.
Did he buy you breakfast again?
No, he didn't buy me
Okay,
breakfast.
you bought
I think we paid, paid each other's way.
Yeah. But you were a coach or something, right? A marketing coach?
I was, yeah. So I had a little, what I call a marketing boutique. I was a stay-at-home dad, really,
okay,
is what it was. And I ended up building websites for real estate agents across the nation.
Okay.
Thousands of them.
Yeah. To get leads and things like that?
So I did, a lot of demand generation, a lot of lead generation, and, call them up, sell them a website, help them with their social media, help them with their coaching.
Yeah, that's very cool. So then you and Joe met a couple times, and then how did the trigger finally happen? You go, hey, let's do this together.
Yeah, well, so I was helping agents. I was kind of helping him, too, for free, to give him some advice.
He was already a realtor, right?
He was already a realtor.
Okay.
And he was doing pretty good. So Joe's got a background in sales. He was in car sales, auto sales, and finance, and so he's a great salesman. I call him the mayor of Edmonds. He's one of those guys. Everywhere you go, everybody knows Joe.
They all know Joe.
Yeah.
Was that from his car days or from his realtor days or both?
Nah, it's just who he is.
Okay.
You just kind of want to give him a hug when you meet him.
Yeah. I saw the video. I saw him on the video there. He looks like a really friendly guy.
He is. Yeah. And so, that's not as much my skill, right?
Yeah.
So I'm more the data marketing guy, and so we thought, man, if we put the two together.
So is he the extrovert and you're the introvert?
That's it.
Okay, got it. Okay. Well, that's cool. So you put the two together, and then obviously you have 7 John L. Scott offices now, but hey, obviously that didn't start with 7, so then what happened?
Yeah, so just the two of us, right? But we were like, I don't know, it seems kind of lame to just call ourselves 2 dudes selling real estate. So, so we
you could be like the moving truck guys, right?
Right.
2 guys in a truck.
So we're like, let's call ourselves something important, and maybe we'll grow into it.
Yeah.
So we came up with the Madrona Group,
and
we hired or brought on. We didn't hire, but we brought on our third agent. His name is Chris Fiamengo, and he's the OG.
I saw him. He's your partner now too, isn't he? Or
so he's actually he leads the. It gets a little complicated because we're layers of teams and whatnot.
Okay.
But the Madrona Group is still a team in and of itself, and he leads that team.
Okay.
In the Ballard office.
Got it. Yeah, I was looking at your website, and I don't know if this is right or not, but you look at the license numbers, and Joe has this license number way down there. Yours is like way up here.
Yeah.
So it looks like he's been at it for quite a while.
Yeah, he's been at it quite a few more years than I have. I've only been licensed 8 years now.
Okay.
And but like I say, I bring the expertise, the data and all the marketing stuff.
But you guys, from looking and talking to you before the show, you guys are local guys. You're born local.
That's it. So Joe was born in Edmonds. I was born in Everett. Don't hold that against me. And
no, I love Everett, man. I used to live out in Lake Stevens, so right across the bridge.
Yeah, I was born and raised there. Went to school there, Cascade High.
Cascade High, okay, very cool. Yeah, I used to coach for Edmonds Woodway. We always played Cascade High back in the day. Yeah. So
my wife went to Edmonds Woodway.
Yeah,
so
good.
My dad.
Both are good schools. Really good schools. Okay, so then, so you started your first office, and then how? I mean, at what point in time do you go, hey, man, we could expand. We could have John L. Scotts everywhere.
Yeah. Well, so how it worked was we wanted to be kind of on our own. So one of the VPs at John L. Scott came up to us, and they're like, hey, why don't you start a team in Ballard? right? We can't let you call it an office because there's only 3 of you.
Okay.
So that was
So was
fine.
that your first office,
Yeah,
Ballard? Okay.
yeah. So we started the Ballard office, and it's run out of a WeWork, right? So it's a virtual-only idea,
Yeah.
even though it's a brick-and-mortar business.
Yeah, good for you, man. That's bootstrapping at its best.
That's bootstrapping.
I'm all about that, even my software company.
Yeah.
So, good. Okay,
and,
cool.
yeah, so they told us, hey, you know what? We're producing. We're doing all right. They said, if you can get 10 agents, we can call you an office.
Okay.
All right. So we started getting agents, right?
Okay.
So, okay, we got 10 agents.
Yeah.
So now we're General Scott Ballard.
Okay. Yeah. So why'd you pick General Scott over the other ones, other brokerages?
You know, I like the fact that they are local.
Okay.
I like that when you think General Scott, you just kind of think like trust, honesty, right? It's just like, I don't know, there's something about that name that really...
So General Scott actually started here. They didn't start somewhere else like
Correct.
some of the other ones that are national. Okay.
No, it's just, so third generation owner, Lennox Scott's our CEO. He, his grandfather was also Lennox.
Yeah.
And they've been here. We've been
That's
97
cool. Do you
years.
get to hang out with him at all?
Lennox?
Yeah.
He calls me from time to time.
Does he? Cool. What the hell are you doing over there? That's good, man.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to stay in touch with the founder.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool. Okay, so then after Ballard, then you went to where?
Yeah, the next one was, so they brought an opportunity to us. And they said, okay, so the Westwood, which is West Seattle, it's the Westwood Mall.
Yeah.
Westwood is, he's looking to retire and wants to sell, right? And we're like, no way. You know, we didn't really want to be, we didn't really want to grow.
It's like, we like Ballard. We'll stay here.
Yeah, we were pretty comfortable with our
Ballard's
10.
a cool place to live.
So, you know, after about a year, I think, of negotiation, we finally decided to pull the trigger on that.
Okay.
And so now we're multi-office.
Wow. That's cool. And then you're up to 7 now. So after West Seattle, then did things go pretty quickly?
Then it went kind of fast, and they started, bringing all.
They kind of figured out, hey, these guys actually are all right. They can build offices.
yeah. Why don't you try this one?
Yeah. So, at what point did Lennox call you? Go, hey guys, you're doing good.
Yeah, he calls pretty regularly.
Okay.
And he'll say,
so he's still active.
Yeah. He'll just kind of tell you, hey, I really want to tell you you're doing a great job. I really like what you're doing.
Yeah.
He's a busy guy, and so you don't get a whole lot of one-on-one time with him. But
that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll get him in here on a radio show one time, even for a segment.
He's always down for a good interview.
Good, yeah. Well, he can get in front of a lot of people on this show, so that's cool. All right, so so other than because what you said for John L. Scott, I know I watched your video, which was kind of cool. It was a short one there on the website, but you guys talk about it's not about transactions, it's about relationships, and it's about building, that value. And so if you think about it, there's lots and lots of realtors out there, lots of brokerages. So how do you see yourself as different, and how do you handle customer service?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's one I love answering. I always joke, like, hey, I can throw a rock out the window right here today. I'm going to hit 2 real estate agents, right?
Yeah.
And so, you
well, that's probably true.
There's probably one in the studio right now.
And you could probably do it with 1 rock.
Yeah. So so this is it's important. And I think the first thing you kind of touched on already is we're local.
Yeah.
Right? So people want to know that you really know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
When you're going around and showing them houses, like, hey, we've lived here our whole life.
Yeah, you grew up, you know all the neighborhoods here.
We know all the neighborhoods. We know where to eat. We know where to get your coffee. We know where to go, how to avoid the traffic. So that's great. But the second thing is I think people really want to know that they're getting a deal. Right?
Yeah.
At least the best deal.
Yeah.
And so, Joe and I are both experts in negotiation.
Yeah.
Right. And that's something that we preach with all of our brokers, and also, practice and are, certified.
Which, that's funny, because actually your website, and we'll give you guys, grab a pencil and paper, like I will say, because I'm going to give you their website here, if not the end of the segment, the first one. But they've got some really cool market reports up there, which I was looking at. We're going to get into that.
Yeah.
But, the key thing is you got to know the neighborhoods, really, because then you'll have the best way to negotiate, it seems like to me.
True.
Yeah. That's very cool.
Yeah, and knowing where the market is at, right? Knowing where the advantages are for the buyers and the sellers, really just understanding exactly all the different, because terms are just as important as price oftentimes, right?
Yeah.
And so, knowing and getting to know, and that's kind of the last one, right? You mentioned customer service. Getting to know the client, but not just getting to know, but what are their wants and needs?
Yeah.
What's important to them, and then fighting for that.
Yeah.
Through the negotiation.
Do you get a lot? Because I know, it's funny how we've changed. In fact, I was going to bring up, I remember back when I was going to Seattle University, that was before Starbucks started, and Howard Schultz was there. They were down at a barista cart down there at the ferry boat.
Wow.
And but and so was Gary Smith up there in Mukilteo on that side. So it was the two of them, right? And they were going back and forth. But it's changed. Seattle has changed massively over the years, and now we've become this tech hub and kind of like Silicon Valley sister,
Yeah, Silicon Valley too, especially in Bellevue. And I don't spend as much time in Bellevue, but the tech industry is really booming things over here. And I read recently we took over Boston as the second wealthiest city in the United States, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of
which has changed. It's changed your business because a lot of you're shielded from and buoyed from a lot of the market stuff going on in the rest of the country.
Yeah, we always kind of talk about being in a little bit of a bubble up
there. Yeah. And I don't know if that'll ever change. Just because of all the tech,
Yeah, and
it's crazy.
Well, and we're bound by the mountains on one side and the ocean on the other. So there's really not a whole lot that can change or grow.
Yeah, unless you want to build a floating house.
Yeah, we have them.
Yeah, we do. Do you ever sell any of those?
I haven't sold one yet.
Really? Oh, man. Well, you got to get into that. Yeah. So, and then talk to me. We got a couple more seconds before we shut the segment down about your community involvement, because I know that's a big deal for people.
Yes, it is. And so one of the big deals we do every year is we're involved in the Forgotten Children's Fund. And we make that a huge highlight of the year. We put money in, and that's great too. But we also make sure that we have buckets at every one of the offices, and we put out advertising to try to get folks in. Anyway, we send the presents off to the organization, and they hand deliver those as dressed up Santa Clauses and Mrs. Santa Clauses and elves to children that might not have had a holiday otherwise.
That's awesome. I'm glad you're involved in that. That's super cool. Yeah. We come back. We're going to talk more with Jason Fox of the Madrona Group. Check them out at themadronagroup.com. Next segment, we're going to get into this big, massive NAR lawsuit that happened, how it's affecting you as a buyer or seller. We'll get into the Seattle housing market analysis, but that's going to include both King County and Snohomish County. So we'll cover all that in this show. With that, I'm Pete. This is Home Matters, Car Radio 97.3 FM and 770 KTTH. All right, we're back. This is Pete with Home Matters, Car Radio 97.3 FM. And our good friends over there at 770 KTTH. We love all you guys. Thanks for listening to the Home Matters Show. We're having a great discussion with Jason Fox. He and his partner, Joe, is it Kaiser?
Kaiser.
Kaiser. Joe Kaiser. Those two guys, local boys, done good out of Edmonds and Linwood. They own the Madrona Group. They've got 7 John L. Scott offices. So before we get into this big lawsuit, kind of how it's affecting everybody is, where are your offices at? I know Ballard's one.
Well, Ballard, obviously, yeah. So I have to put them in alphabetical order so I remember. So we go Ballard, Bothell, Des Moines, Federal Way, Mukilteo, Vashon Island, and Westwood, which is West Seattle.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Cool. Are you ever going to head out to Whitby?
There's an office out there, and we'll see.
That's cool. I used to live out there.
Did you?
Outside of Langley. I loved it. My boys were small. It was just so nice. They could play in the woods,
Yeah.
I grew up down in Olympia, so.
It is beautiful out there. We have about 4 agents at our Mukilteo office that are on Whitby, and so I get to go out there and visit them a lot.
I also lived in Old Town Mukilteo. I don't know how long. You probably remember. Did you ever get down to Mukilteo when Taylor's was there before ours?
Yeah.
That's when I lived down there, and they had the old post office, and all the old farts would come down there, and I'd run down there and stop and have coffee with them on Saturday mornings.
Yep. Yeah, I took my first date to the junior prom to the Arnie's up there.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, so that's good. So, guys, here's the thing, too. They have a lot of different offices. Probably wherever you're at, they can help you out. Just go to the Madrona. It starts with the THE, themadronagroup.com. That's their website. It's a great site. It has a lot of these market reports. But they're covering King, Snohomish, and I guess Pierce County, too.
A little bit of Pierce,
A little bit of Pierce, which is good.
Wherever the business
Maybe you'll get down to my neck of the woods, Olympia, sometime in the years. He's like running. No, we're offices.
That's like 4 traffic points.
I know. Well, with the traffic these days, holy smokes, man. It takes you a whole day to get somewhere.
I know it.
So, all right. So tell me now, because you sent me some notes, and I knew about this lawsuit that was happening.
Yeah.
And I had heard one time it was like $1.8 billion. I thought, holy smokes, this thing's huge. And then apparently now they're in negotiations around $418 million. Mm-hmm. But it's not so much the money. It's like what causes this suit and the settlement?
Yeah, well, so it's basically it's compensation, right?
Okay.
And most importantly, the compensation that was paid to buyer brokers. And so some folks that sold their house and paid a certain amount of compensation decided that they thought that the amount that they paid was unfair and that they had been misled.
But wait a second. Did they not have a choice in the percentage they were paying? There was no negotiation? Or
that's a funny thing. There's always been a choice. And so it's hard for us in the industry to see it quite the same way that the jury did, but So
was this a class action where a lot of buyers got together?
Yeah, a lot of buyers got together.
Okay. And it was national, not just Washington State.
Right. Well, it ended up being national.
Yeah.
And so it affected the entire industry, and then of course the DOJ got involved.
Right. Because just from stuff I've done in the past, real estate, it's always been like a 3-3, right? You do 3 on the seller, 3 on the buyer. But I guess that's all going to change.
Yes, we can't really even say that anymore, right? So now,
is it whatever they negotiate? Is that kind of what happens?
It's whatever they negotiate, yeah. But it's got to be a clear. And so one of the big deals is what we call decoupling of the compensation. Right?
Okay.
So the seller, it can no longer. So what we used to say is it takes about 6% to sell your house.
Yeah.
3% is going to go to me. 3% is going to go to the buyer.
Yeah.
I can't say that anymore. Now, we say, hey, it's going to cost you 3% to sell your house, and then we have to decide on an amount to pay the buyer.
And then there's that awkward silence in the room when the seller goes, I don't want to pay him anything.
I don't want to pay him anything. Nobody ever does.
I know. They do what's fair, which is good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but yeah, there's choices there, and how it's going to play out long term, it's going to be hard to tell.
Yeah.
It just went into effect August 17th. And so we're all still adjusting to it. But so far, so good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So how does this actually, because isn't this an antitrust lawsuit? And
That's
how
right.
Was it what you said then because there was an implied, hey, you're going to pay this? That was the antitrust
Correct.
thing?
Yeah. And, and there may have been a few bad apples, right? There's a few bad apples ruins the bunch.
Yeah.
And so, there was talks of things like, hey, the state law is that you pay this, or you're required to pay this, or, wording such as that implied that you
was that actually in a written contract to the?
I don't think it's ever going to be written
down.
Oh,
it was verbal.
It's verbal,
this. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So with what you said, so the seller, and so you're the seller's agent,
mm-hmm.
you get your 3, but then how do you pull in the buyer's agent to negotiate whatever they get?
Yeah. So the second, or maybe the biggest deal, is that buyers now are required to sign a written agreement, just like a seller, right?
Okay.
So on January 1st, Washington State wanted to get ahead of this, right? And so they totally rewrote the agency laws.
Okay.
And the state started to require that these written agreements get signed. Now, the wording then was as soon as reasonably possible after a real estate responsibility. Right?
Yeah.
Something to that extent, right? So it was kind of vague. Like, what does that mean? Like a showing, definitely a contract. I cannot write up a purchase and sale without one of these written agreements now.
Okay.
But the NAR settlement is a little bit more clear. And it says that we have to get a written agreement from the buyer that the two of us agree on what the compensation will be, no matter what, before we tour a home.
And each of those agreements, it's per house, per transaction, right?
Not necessarily.
Or is it a blanket?
It can be. It can be. So you can write it exclusive or non-exclusive. It can be limited to a single showing, or it could be a 1-year blanket.
Okay.
It really depends.
Because where my mind went, Jason, was, with these markets being so hot up here, I know we're going to talk about that in the future. Maybe they're cooling down, but you got so many offers going in on a house, especially up in Snohomish County. When I was looking at your report,
That's right.
It's like by the time you get your buyer agreement, it's like, well, so house is gone.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you handle that? I mean, do you do more blanket type stuff? Is that
that's the goal, right? And this is, what we're teaching is, and what we've taught for a long time is that we should treat a buyer the same way that we treat a seller.
Right.
We've always taken sellers have been, their gold, and you go and you present and you got this whole deal and you show them your marketing and show them all your good stuff, and then we get the agreement signed and but a buyer was kind of like, sure, let's hop in the car and go look at stuff, right?
Yeah.
We can't do that anymore.
Okay.
Now I need to, hey, let's set up some time. Let me talk to you about the 3 things that are most important to you, right? We want to talk about the market. We want to talk about what's important to you. And we want to go over what it looks like to buy a house in Washington right now.
So you have to bring the buyer in as well.
Yes.
Sounds like.
Yeah. Okay. And, so now you're doing, a presentation for the buyer, showing them what your value is.
So you got more work to do then.
It's a lot more work.
Yeah, it's a lot more work.
Not for us. We've been doing these the whole time.
Oh, you have been? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So we've been teaching this for, since.
So that's the right thing
started.
to do, actually.
Yeah, it is the right thing
Got
to
it.
do.
Okay. Got a couple more minutes. So I want to ask you about this NMLS opt-out thing. What's going on there?
Yeah, so that's pretty interesting as well. So the settlement is against NAR and NAR-owned MLS companies.
Okay.
Northwest MLS is unique in that it is privately owned. Technically, we as the brokers own it, right?
Okay. And those are what? Redfin, Zillow? Is that a different deal?
So those are portals or real estate
They're portals.
agencies.
Okay. So the NWMLS is kind of a conduit into those.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is where we input all the data.
Right.
Okay. So this is if I get a new listing, I go put in everything into the MLS, and then it shoots out to everybody else from there.
Got it.
Right. So the MLSs that are realtor owned are now not allowed to show what the buyer compensation is on their websites. It's very, very interesting. Now, the Northwest MLS said, we don't agree with that policy.
Okay.
We're not realtor owned. We're going to go ahead and opt out of this settlement, and we're going to continue to show that buyer compensation on our website.
And how can they opt out? I mean,
they're not realtor owned.
Okay.
The verbiage is
so
very specific.
the NAR, the antitrust lawsuit, did not cover that. It only covered realtor owned, is what
Correct.
you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We come back. I got a couple more questions about this because I know there's a big, huge market out there called off-market listings, and we're going to discuss that in relationship to this. We'll continue our discussion with Jason Fox. Go check him out at the madronagroup.com. And we'll talk about kind of the market analysis in Snohomish King and Pierce County, wherever they're at, coming up here in the next two segments. With that, I'm Pete. This is Home Matters, KIRO Radio 97.3 FM and 770 KTTH. All right, we're back. This is Pete with Home Matters. We'll do 770 KTTH and KIRO Radio 97.3 FM. Thank you guys for listening to the show. I hope you're learning something here. We always, over the years, we've talked about this. Last 16, it's a kind of Home Matters University, where you can learn all about different things in and around the home. We've had home smart tech. We've had realtors and brokers. We've had investment and finance. We've had home improvement, home remodeling. But anything that matters to you matters to us. And so I'm glad you're listening. We're going to continue our discussion here with Jason Fox. He's one of the founders with Joe Kaiser at the Madrona Group under John L. Scott. So they've got 7 different locations. Just go to themadronagroup.com. It's themadronagroup.com. They have all their offices. You can call them there. Do you ever talk to anybody on the Is there a way they can get a hold of you?
Absolutely.
What's the number they should call you at?
So our office line is 206-899-5155. My personal cell is 425-299-8454.
There you go. So if you want to talk to the guy on the radio, Jason, just so say your personal cell one more time. 425.
It's 425-299-8454.
Okay, good. So give him a call, and you can talk to him. The guy here on the radio, he'll answer all your questions and take care of you himself or point you in the right direction. So, all right. So what we were talking about this whole NWMLS and kind of the opt out, and if you're not a realtor, you can do whatever you want. It sounds like, which is kind of odd. It's like, okay, we're in the realtor game, but if you're not a realtor, just hey, whatever.
Yeah.
But I always, I was talking to you when we were going through the kind of the show prep. And it gets me thinking because there's a huge market out here. It's a silent market. It's the off-market stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So if things are being opted out, does that have an effect, an upswing in the off-market area?
Yeah, I think so. And, again, a lot of what we're going to see is time will tell.
Yeah.
But, what we're anticipating is definitely people kind of coming to us and, hey, I have this listing and maybe I'm not really ready to offer any compensation. Well, let's see what, you can do off market first.
Okay.
And then, the next phase of that is what we think buyers are going to come to the seller. We've already started to see that, right?
Yeah.
We're 2 weeks in now. Hey, I don't want to work with a buyer broker. Can I just buy it from you directly?
Oh. So tell me how that works then.
Yeah, so that's dual agency, right?
Okay.
Which is now in Washington State, we call it limited dual agency.
Okay.
So limited dual agency means that technically we represent both the buyer and the seller.
Okay.
All right. Now, traditionally, this has not necessarily been something that we promote and or is seen as maybe in each of their best interests, right? It would be similar to, hiring an attorney for both the husband and the wife in a divorce
Well, because
case.
when you get into negotiation, it gets kind of dicey, I think.
Right. Because on one side, I'm like, this house is worth so much. And the other side, I'm like, nah, not so much.
It's my other personality talking to you now.
Right.
Okay, but it does exist.
It does exist. For the right situation, it can make sense, right? Family members, etc.
Yeah.
But for the average, buyer and seller, it maybe isn't in necessarily everybody's best interest. Something I've tended to, kind of frown on. But and then limited just means that now we do have to have signatures by both parties to agree to allow this happening.
But I would think, I don't know, I read somewhere a while back that roughly 10% of all home sales are off market.
Yeah.
They're not even listed.
Yeah, well, and FSBOs and
Yeah,
about 10%.
Do you get approached by then a lot of sellers that way in your?
Occasionally, but typically what you find is that unless, you have like a specialty type property, you're going to do best putting it on the market where you get the most amount of eyeballs. No matter how big my network is, it's not as big as the MLS. And it's not,
that's
there's
true.
thousands of buyer brokers out there working on our behalf to try to get this home sold and earn that compensation.
So you talked about off air, you were talking about the strategy, and you said, hey, with this happening now and the opt outs, there's probably going to be more open houses. Could you explain that?
Yeah. So if you call me and you say, Jason, I want you to show me this house, and I'm like, okay, well, cool. We have to set up an appointment, and I have to get you to sign this agreement, and now you're committed to me, and we don't really know each other, perhaps. Maybe that's not going to be something you're super excited about right off the bat, especially as we're all learning the new law. So I'm anticipating open houses being a little bit bigger deal.
Yeah.
So the listing agent can hold an open house, and all the folks there that are touring the home, they don't need a buyer representation agreement because it's you're representing the seller in the situation, right? So no agreement needed. Go tour open houses freely, and then bring that information back to your broker.
How do you think that's going to mesh in with a lot of the tech? Because everybody's on their phone these days. You got drone technology. You got better video, where people just go, I don't want to spend the time running around doing open houses. Just show it to me on my phone, and I can preview the property that way.
Yeah, I've sold 2 houses sight unseen myself through Matterport 3D. So myself, like every listing I do, I'm going to do a Matterport 3D video where you get the tour through, and then with video, and then of course the quality of the images. But I do want to kind of just remind everybody that these images are taken by professionals at the very best light at the very best time. So
plus they use a lot of AI to doctor those images.
Sometimes they do. Sometimes they do.
I know some of these video guys. That's why I say that.
You're not allowed to do that.
I know, but I know they're doing that. So make it look good. Okay, but you're saying, I mean, it's kind of like I have sponsors, they have showrooms, and I tell people, get off the internet, go into the showroom, because then you can see it, touch it, feel it. So you're kind of that same mindset.
Well, again, I'll sell a house. I haven't seen if they're into it, but I tell you, both times when they come to do the walkthrough, boy, have I been nervous, because it's a little bit different experience, and they've relied on me to give them the feel of the neighborhood, and there's a lot of intangibles besides.
Do you ever run into when they come in and before you've actually sign the papers, and they're going, okay, well, this is wrong, that's wrong, we got to negotiate this? Do you run into that kind of thing?
Oh, yeah, quite often.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you're stuck with that. You have to get through all of that.
Yeah, we got to.
That's got to be hard nowadays, too, because this market, we talked with the tech bubble, it's so buoyed, and it's such a strong market, and it seems like a lot of the sellers will go like, yeah, whatever, I'll just find the next buyer tomorrow.
It's true, right? Yeah, I mean, sometimes people they're not willing to do a whole lot. And right now the market is leaning in the seller's favor. And it has been for a long, long time. Yeah. And I'm sure, if you're a buyer out there, you're like, yeah, duh. But, mathematically, statistically, it is, it's been that way for quite some time.
Yeah. Well, that leads us into, let's talk about now market analysis. We'll start with King County, and then we'll go to Snohomish, and then you can also let us know since you're down in Pierce too. So what's happening here in King County, in the Seattle area?
Yeah, in the Seattle area right now. So I like to kind of put out the 3 signals that I think really tell the story of how a market is doing.
Okay.
And that's the inventory level, or basically how much supply there is, right? Simple economics, supply and demand. If there's a not very much supply and a lot of demand, then we have ourselves a seller's market. Vice versa, we have ourselves a buyer's market. So the inventory in Seattle right now is about 2.5 months.
Okay.
And so a median market, and it's funny, they used to say 5 to 6 months, but I don't know if we're ever going to get to 5 or 6 months.
I don't know if you'll ever get back to that.
Yeah.
Unless the interest rates go to, 15% or something, maybe.
Something.
Yeah.
Right.
It'd have to be something high,
But people are living in their houses longer.
Yeah.
The construction's hard. It's just so many factors.
Yeah.
We can't just build. I mean, there's rezoning and stuff. We'll get into that. But so that's considered low. It's funny because during COVID, it got down to 0.8 months, 0.7 months of supply.
Really?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. And
why was it so low? Okay, I would think it'd be the other way. So why was it so low during COVID?
Well, the interest rates.
Okay.
Yeah. I had a buddy call me the other day. He's like, hey, I think I'm going to need to sell my house. What do I need to do about these interest rates? And I'm like, what do you have? He's like 2 point something. Yeah.
That's scary because you get out of a house and how do you get back in?
How do you get back in? I'm like, you need to stay there.
I know that doesn't help me in my business, but yeah, you're right. Did you advise people to do that?
I do. Yeah,
that's a smart thing to do.
This is my good friend. Yeah, of course.
Exactly, because it's like you may not get back into a house for a while. Then you get caught in the updraft, with the interest rates and they went up and that kind of stuff.
Some people, some people need to do it, right? But if it's you're just thinking about it, and maybe wait just a little bit.
Okay, so inventory levels is the first one, and you said it's around a couple months, 60 days.
And then interest rates, which we touched on, right? So right now, I don't know today, and don't quote me because it
fluctuates all over. Yeah.
Roughly 6.5, 6.4, somewhere in there.
Okay,
which is it's better than the 7 that we have been seeing. At least there's a 6 in front of it. But I think people are going to get a lot more comfortable when you see a 5.
But a lot of these younger tech people, could you kind of put the interest rates in perspective over like what it normally is?
Sure. Well, so my dad bought a house down on Madrona Street, which is and back in the day, and he paid 18%.
Yeah, I remember. Well, my dad and I were building down Olympia in the 70s, and Carter was in office, and it was getting near 20. My dad used to always say, I don't give a damn if it goes to 50%. We're building waterfront homes for people with cash. They're going to buy. He was right. But, it was tough back then because the interest rates were so high.
So high.
Yeah.
Historically, 6.5 is actually considered low.
It's So it's right in there historically where it's going to be.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, we had that artificial deflationary period for so long at low interest rates.
We call it the unicorn years.
Yeah.
You're never going to
I don't know if you're going to see that again. Yeah. Because it was artificial. I just last time we had a guy from Boss Financial, and we're at 40-year tax lows now. I mean, you can't stay there. It has to go the other way, so
something has to
So
go.
Actually, if you look at it, it's a good time to get a home. And
it is.
If you sit there and wait, I know the Fed's talking about easing rates a little bit, right?
Yeah, so we're looking at, I think the 17th or the 18th, he meets again, and he's basically already said he's going to lower the rate. Now, a couple things that are important to note about this is that, one, the federal interest rate is not mortgage interest rates.
Yeah.
Right? So this doesn't mean mortgage interest rates drop when he lowers
right.
it. And then two is that their drop has already been anticipated and is already baked in. So we're actually not even going to see a drop once he announces it, most likely, unless he goes higher than a quarter percentage, which we don't think he is going to.
Okay, cool. When we come back, we're going to continue in King County. There's I want to go through the sales intensity indicator one more time, just so they get that down with inventory, sales intensity, and interest rates. And then we'll get into Snohomish County, where a lot of you guys live, and down in Pierce County as well. With that, I'm Pete. This is Home Matters, KIRO Radio 97.3 FM and 770 KTTH. All right, we're back. This is Pete with Home Matters, KIRO Radio 97.3 FM and 770 KTTH. For all you guys listening out there on a Saturday afternoon, thanks for listening in on the show. We got a good one here. If you missed the first couple segments of this show, it's very interesting. Jason Fox is talking all about not just kind of his story with the Madrona Group, but also and how they founded it with his partner Joe Kaiser. But this NAR, National Association of Realtor lawsuit, how it affects buyers and sellers. If you're thinking about selling your home or buying a home, just go on to mynorthwest.com. It'll be up there. Just look up Home Matters, and his podcast will be up there in perpetuity. And also give him a call. He gave, I think it was the last segment, he gave us a personal sellout, which, hey, good. You can give him a call. So I think that takes a lot of trust. But that's good. He'll handle it. So, all right, yeah, you can ask for him. You ask for Jason. He's the guy on the radio here, the voice that you're listening to along with me. Okay, so we were talking about market analysis. We were in King County before we moved to Snohomish and some peers. And you were talking about the three indicators: inventory, interest rates, and then you kind of touched on sales intensity. Yeah. But can you talk a little bit more about what that is and how it affects that?
Yeah, so sales activity intensity is actually a term kind of coined by Lennox. He now thinks that this is the most important metric. And if you guys know, well, you probably wouldn't know this, but Lennox is a real bookworm, right? He really is into the stats.
He's into data and all that.
Yes, very much so. So this is what he's kind of put together. And what it means is simply it's the percentage of new listings that go into the pending status. So essentially sell within the first 30 days of hitting the market.
So that's his equation.
Yeah. Okay. So the idea is instead of like looking at days on market, which so many things can play into that. We want to see how fast is the inventory.
Yeah, you want to see the transaction close. That's really the whole idea of this thing, right?
Right. So, so right now in Seattle, that's at about 42%. Okay. So 42% of listings that hit the market are going to get sold in the first 32 days of hitting the market.
Wow.
Now that's considered strong. A neutral market is about 30%.
Okay.
Again, to put it in perspective, during COVID years, we were seeing 90%.
Really?
Yes.
Holy smokes.
So it's still taking time for people to process like this difference. So it feels like the market is so down, right? But it's still actually very fast, right? Really in the seller's favor. And in Snohomish County right now, it's 57.8%. Right.
Holy smokes! Yeah. So it's quite a bit higher. So what? So you got. We'll talk about Snohomish in just a second. But in King County, I looked it up while I was looking at your report. By the way, guys, that report's super cool. If you're looking at the different counties, they have them up there, and you can kind of see the inventory. You can see the sales intensity, and you can see the interest rates and things. They talk about it for each of the counties. So if you're interested in living in a certain area, just go to the madronagroup.com. They have it there. I was looking at kind of the house prices too, and the number of days on market or months on market or whatever. Yeah. But it seems like the King County, that sweet spot is kind of in that $750,000 to $1.5 million. Is that kind of?
Yeah, that's about right. So the median home price is about $820,000 in Seattle. That's including condo and single family residential. Right. So.
But is single family still outpacing condo? Is it
Absolutely.
Still okay?
Yeah. So your single family is going to be up closer to that $1 million for a median. Your condo is closer to $650,000.
I saw you guys go down to like $350,000, but where the hell would you find a house for $350,000 in King County?
In King County?
Yeah.
Did it have a house on it? Was it just a foundation?
Yeah, exactly. That's about. I don't even think you buy a piece of land for $350,000.
You can't hardly. And if you can, oh man, we have time for this, but real quick. Everybody wants to come. They come to the land. They're like, hey, this land's only $150,000. It's not going to have water. It's not going to have power. Yeah. It's not going to have maybe even a street access. Okay, so make sure you investigate those things before you.
So you build in several $100,000 on top of what you're paying for the land just to get it. Yeah,
just to get it build ready.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, all right. So let's talk now about Snohomish County because you mentioned that it's up there. As a higher sales intensity. There was one thing in there because it was funny. It shows whatever it was like strong, very strong, and then frenzy. And I saw one day what was the frenzy price range there?
The frenzy it's actually the intensity, right? Okay. So that's at like the 70% mark. Yeah. Which even during the spring we were up in the frenzy area this year.
Wow.
And then like I said, during COVID we were making upwards. He came up with Uber frenzy when
Uber
it was
frenzy
90%. Yeah. We've never seen
COVID
that before.
frenzy.
Yeah.
So what if you look at in Snohomish County, like the pockets? Because you got the Snohomish, you got Lake Stevens, you got Everett, you got all the different areas. Are there different areas that are a little hotter and other areas that are slower? Like, is Marysville typically slower versus Snohomish, which is
slower?
Higher?
Yeah. Snohomish is real hot, but just about every time you sit down with a buyer, like, hey, if I want to live somewhere, outside the, Seattle.
Yeah.
Okay. What's your number one spot? Edmonds.
Really?
Every time.
Huh. Why do they say that? Why? Why is
Edmonds is just it's a wonderful little town.
It is. Well, it's got the waterfront there.
It's got the water,
and restaurants.
and especially in the bowl. Everybody wants to be in the bowl. There's a lot
Yeah.
of 4 or 5 star restaurants.
Yeah.
It's walkable. It's just,
And it's not as far away as, say, like a Mukilteo.
It's
where
not as far away.
Yeah.
It's right there. You're
Yeah.
right next to shoreline.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Edmonds is the spot. But yeah, Snohomish is real popular. Linwood's gaining popularity. We got the light rail open, right?
Okay.
Mukilteo also by the water.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. So what I looked at Snohomish County, it looks like 500K to $1.5 million, kind of is that price range up there?
Yeah, so it's going to be about 7.
Okay.
Median.
So I was looking at one thing I wanted to ask you because I was thinking about this and I go, okay, my brain goes to if I know the frenzy is like that 750 up a little bit, right, in that frenzy zone. And frenzy means, in my mind, that there's probably a lot of buyers and there's a lot of activity, and they probably sell the house over asking price, right?
Yes.
Is that correct?
A lot of times, yes.
So would there ever be a pricing strategy where I price it like near the 750, or how do you deal with pricing strategies for sellers?
Yeah. Okay, for sellers as opposed to buyers. Yeah. Well, there is, and it really depends on where we're at in the market. So right now, as we've kind of slowed down seasonally, I probably wouldn't want to underprice it. Maybe during the spring, and especially during some of the COVID times, I might advise, hey, let's go just a hair under even what our CMA is, because if we get,
what's a CMA?
Comparable market analysis.
Okay, so the homes around your neighborhood then.
Yeah,
okay.
so the different homes that match your statistics, and we kind of gain our price off of that, similar to appraisal. So I might suggest let's go just a little bit lower and really draw everybody in, right? And get all that activity, get that buzz.
So that's the conversation you're having with them, which is, well, if we price a little bit lower than the CMA, we'll get the activity and the frenzy, which will drive the price up, versus the seller saying, you know what, I'm going to go a little higher because I know it's going to sell at some point in time, right?
Yes, right. And that was, that was a big thing we were dealing with a lot during that time. They wanted to go ahead and get that mark, but see, the bid up price is an artificial price, right? That's not a comparable price. It's like a one-time kind of thing. Okay. So if we can get it, fantastic. But we're not going to get it pricing it there because buyers are smart now, right? They're going to look and go, oh, they're trying to get all that, But for some reason, if I can start at a reasonable price, well, unfortunately, it's emotion, right? Yeah. We get attached and we decide, hey, I really want this house and I'm going to make it mine.
Yeah, you got to overbid then.
And then things start to get a little crazy.
So how does that factor into the CMA, though? If you have a bunch of houses that are going over market price, does that affect the CMA then?
So it does and kind of not, right? Okay. So it was really tough to adjust for COVID when it started to go down. Yeah. Because so people would come to us and they'd say, "Hey, my house is worth $1 million." I'd say, "Well, it's actually worth about $900,000." They're like, "Well, my neighbor got $1 million." I said, "Well, your neighbor got that in April of 2019. That's not. Okay. We're not going to get that price today." Yeah. So. That was a tough thing to overcome. Okay. Yeah.
So where do you, just because we're running out of time here, Jason, I want to ask you this last question. Where do you see the market going? Is it going to stay really strong, cool off a bit? What's your thoughts?
So we had a little bit of a lighter spring this year than we typically do, and I think we're going to recover here in the fall. So I think this fall is actually going to pick up a little bit, and we're going to see quite a bit of action because we have a lot of pent-up sellers and buyers. Okay. So I think that once the Fed announces interest rates finally lowering, that's going to kind of start to
open the gates,
change the conversation at the water cooler, if you will.
Got it. Well, Jason, thank you for coming on the show. This was very educational. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no, thank you. It was great. I enjoyed myself, and can't wait to see you again.
Good. Sounds good. Jason Fox, founder, along with Joe Kaiser at the Madrona Group. Check them out at themadronagroup.com. Also, go to mynorthwest.com. Look up the show because there was a second segment. Jason gave out his personal self. You want to talk to him, you got to listen to that second segment.
Keep saying that.
He's in there. You can ask for him. All right, with that up, Pete, this is Home Matters, KIRO Radio 97.3 FM at 770 KTTH.